Laura was a single mother who had faced many struggles in her life. After her husband passed away in an accident, she was left alone to raise her teenage son, Daniel. Life had not been easy for her since then. She worked long hours at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night, just to keep food on the table. Most days she barely got time to rest, but she never complained. All she wanted was to make sure her son had a chance at a better future. Daniel often saw how tired his mother was, yet she always smiled at him and told him that things would get better. Deep down, Laura wanted to believe that too, though her heart often felt heavy with worry about money and the future. Laura had always dreamed of owning a home where she and Daniel could live in peace. She wanted a place that would not only give them shelter but also a sense of belonging. They had moved from one small rental to another for years, never staying long enough to make it feel like home. Every time she saw families with big houses and beautiful gardens, she wished she could give Daniel the same. But with her limited income, that dream seemed far away. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, Laura sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment. Daniel was doing his homework quietly, and she scrolled through property listings on her old laptop. It was something she sometimes did, not because she thought she could buy a house, but because she liked to imagine what life could be like in a place of their own. That night, something unusual caught her eye. It was a listing for an old plantation estate outside of town. The price was so low that she thought it was a mistake. It was hundreds of acres of land with a large main house, though the description said it had been abandoned for years and needed serious repairs. Curious, Laura clicked through the pictures. Most of the windows were broken, the roof was damaged, and the gardens were wild with weeds. But there was something about the house that stirred her imagination. She pictured Daniel running through the fields, helping her plant vegetables and maybe even turning part of the estate into something that could earn money, like a small inn or a farm. The thought gave her a flicker of hope. The next day she called the number on the listing and arranged to see the property. Daniel came along and they drove out to the edge of town where the plantation stood. The driveway was overgrown, the gates rusty, and the once grand house looked sad and forgotten. Still, as they stepped onto the porch, Laura felt something inside her. She could almost hear the laughter of families that once lived there, and imagine what it could look like restored. Daniel, on the other hand, wrinkled his nose and said it looked haunted. Laura laughed and told him that sometimes things looked worse before they got better. The real estate agent who met them explained that nobody wanted the plantation. It had been empty for decades, and many people in town believed it was cursed. Some even said the original owners left behind dark secrets. Because of all the rumors, no one had made an offer, and the bank was desperate to sell. Laura listened carefully but tried not to let the stories scare her. She saw potential where others only saw trouble. That night she could not sleep. She thought about the risks. She barely had enough savings to cover the down payment, and she would need to sell most of her belongings to manage the rest. Everyone would probably call her foolish for even thinking about it. Yet for the first time in years she felt a strong push inside her heart. Maybe this was the chance she had been waiting for. If she worked hard, she could fix it little by little, and it could become not only their home but also a way to make money. In the morning, Laura sat Daniel down and asked him how he felt about the plantation. At first he shrugged and said it was too big and scary, but when she explained her idea of turning it into a place where they could grow food, raise animals, or even rent rooms to visitors, Daniel's eyes lit up. He had always wanted space to run and play, and the thought of having their own land excited him. Seeing his smile gave Laura the courage she needed. Within a week, Laura made the decision. She sold her small car, pawned a few pieces of jewelry she had kept from her mother, and used her savings to buy the plantation. The papers were signed quickly since no one else was interested. When the keys were handed to her, Laura held them tightly, her hands shaking with both fear and joy. She knew it was a huge risk, but she also knew it was a step toward building something better for Daniel. Moving into the plantation was not easy. The first night, the house felt cold and unwelcoming. The wind howled through the broken windows and the floor creaked under their steps. They had to use sleeping bags because the rooms were too dusty to set up beds right away. Daniel complained that it was spooky, but Laura reassured him, saying that every great home started as just a house, and it was up to them to bring it back to life. The following days were filled with hard work. Laura cleaned cobwebs, scrubbed floors, and patched leaks, while Daniel helped with small tasks like clearing weeds from the front yard. Some neighbors drove by slowly, shaking their heads as if they could not believe someone had actually bought the old plantation. At the grocery store, Laura overheard people whispering that she would regret it, but she chose to ignore them. She reminded herself that they had doubted her before, and yet she had survived every hardship. Late one evening, as she sat on the porch after a long day of cleaning, Laura looked out at the wide fields stretching beyond the trees. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, and for the first time in years she felt at peace. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be bills to pay, repairs to make, and plenty of challenges. But there was also hope, something she had not felt for a long time. Daniel joined her on the porch, holding 2 mugs of cocoa he had made. He handed one to his mother and leaned against her shoulder. "Do you think we can really do this, Mom?" he asked softly. Laura smiled, kissed his forehead, and said, "Yes, we can. This is our home now, and together we'll make it beautiful again." The plantation might have been abandoned and broken, but to Laura, it was the beginning of a new chapter. She didn't know what secrets the land held or what challenges lay ahead. All she knew was that she had taken a leap of faith, and sometimes faith was the only thing that could turn dreams into reality. Life at the plantation slowly began to take shape, but every day brought something unexpected. Laura and Daniel had only lived there for a few weeks when they started noticing things that made the old estate feel even more mysterious. The house was so large that many rooms remained untouched, and the garden seemed to hide secrets in every corner. While cleaning, Laura often found scraps of paper, old tools, or broken furniture that seemed to belong to another time. Each discovery told her that the estate had lived through many stories long before they arrived. One morning, Laura decided to explore the main study of the plantation. It was a dusty room filled with tall wooden shelves, most of them still stacked with books whose pages had yellowed with age. Some of the titles were so faded that she could barely read them. As she pulled out one heavy ledger covered in cobwebs, a folded piece of parchment slipped out and fell to the floor. When she opened it, she found handwritten notes about shipments of special cargo arriving at the estate many decades ago. The notes did not explain what the cargo was, but they mentioned large amounts being hidden for safekeeping. The handwriting was elegant and old-fashioned, and Laura realized that these notes could date back to the late 1800s or early 1900s. She set the paper aside, not thinking too much of it at first. But as she continued exploring, she began noticing a pattern. In the attic, she found a trunk filled with rotting clothes and small personal items. Tucked underneath the fabric was another book, this one describing business dealings that seemed unusual. There were records of metal shipments and coded entries that hinted at gold or silver, though nothing was written clearly. Laura frowned, wondering if the plantation had once been involved in secret trading. Daniel, who was far more curious than his mother, took a special interest in the strange finds. He had always loved adventure stories, and now he felt as though he was living inside one. "Mom," he said excitedly one afternoon, "what if this place is hiding something really big? Like treasure or something?" Laura laughed, telling him that not everything mysterious had to end in treasure. But deep down she too felt a small spark of curiosity. The house itself seemed to play tricks on them. At night, when everything was quiet, Laura sometimes heard faint noises like footsteps or the creaking of doors. She would check, only to find nothing. She told herself it was just the wind or the old wood settling, but she could not shake the feeling that the house was full of secrets. During the day, Daniel discovered loose floorboards in the hallways. When he pulled one up, there was only empty space beneath, but the sound it made was hollow, as though something deeper was hidden below the floors. One rainy afternoon, Laura decided to visit the town library to learn more about the plantation. She met Mr. Whitman, a retired history teacher who spent most of his time in the archives. When Laura mentioned the name of the plantation, his eyes lit up with interest. He told her that the estate had once belonged to one of the wealthiest families in the region. According to him, the family had connections to trade routes that extended far beyond the town. There were even whispers that they smuggled gold during uncertain times and stored it on the property. Laura listened carefully, though she kept her expression calm. Mr. Whitman explained that the plantation had been abandoned after a financial collapse, and since then people avoided it. Some believed the family left in a hurry, taking what they could while others thought they had buried their fortune underground before fleeing. Of course, Mr. Whitman added with a shrug, these are just stories. People like to make myths about old estates. Back at the plantation, Laura tried to focus on the repairs. Yet the idea that the land might hold something hidden refused to leave her mind. As she and Daniel worked in the overgrown garden, they uncovered odd metal scraps buried under the soil, rusted locks, broken chains, and even what looked like pieces of old crates. The finds were strange, but they told a story of a past where the plantation had been more than just a home. One evening, Daniel was pulling weeds near the side of the house when he tripped on something hard. He brushed away the dirt and found a small piece of iron sticking out of the ground. At first they thought it was just another old tool, but when Laura dug further they discovered a round iron handle attached to a metal plate. Clearing away more dirt revealed what looked like the outline of a hatch, partly buried under vines and years of soil. Daniel's eyes widened with excitement. "Mom, this is it. This has to be something important," he shouted. Laura felt a rush of nerves and wonder. The hatch was heavy, with rust eating away at its surface, but it was clearly man-made and designed to be hidden. They tried pulling at it, but it would not budge. It was too late in the evening to continue, so they covered it back up and decided to return the next day with better tools. That night, Laura lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept circling back to the hatch. Could it be a storm cellar? A hiding place? Or maybe just an old storage pit? Yet the documents she had found, the whispers from the historian, and now this discovery all connected in a strange way. The plantation seemed to be speaking to her piece by piece, revealing its secrets. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear, knowing that whatever they found could change everything. The next morning, she borrowed a crowbar and a shovel from a kind neighbor who wished her luck, but warned her to be careful with old places like that. Together, she and Daniel worked tirelessly to clear the hatch. It took hours of digging and scraping before they could see its full shape. It was a rectangular iron door with hinges nearly fused shut from rust. Using the crowbar, Laura pressed with all her strength while Daniel helped pull. At last, with a loud creak, the hatch lifted slightly, sending a wave of stale air up from below. They looked at each other in silence. Beneath the hatch was a dark opening, a narrow staircase made of stone leading underground. The air smelled of damp earth and age, like something untouched for decades. Daniel wanted to go down immediately, but Laura held him back. She wanted to make sure it was safe, so they agreed to prepare flashlights and ropes before exploring further. That evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, Laura stood near the hatch and felt the weight of her decision. She knew that opening this passage might uncover something incredible or something dangerous. Yet she could not turn away now. The plantation had chosen her, and she felt it deep in her heart. Whatever was waiting underground, she and Daniel would face it together. The plantation no longer seemed just like a broken house in wild land. It was becoming a puzzle, each piece leading them closer to a truth hidden for generations. For the first time since she bought it, Laura realized that the whispers about the estate might not just be old legends. There was something real beneath their feet, waiting to be discovered. And though fear lingered in her chest, the thought of what lay below filled her with a spark of determination she had not felt in years. Laura and Daniel spent the next day preparing to go down into the hidden passage. Laura borrowed stronger flashlights, a rope, and a small toolbox from the same neighbor who had given them tools before. Daniel was more excited than nervous. He kept saying that maybe they would find treasure, or at least something cool like old weapons or hidden rooms. Laura tried to keep her son's excitement balanced by reminding him that it might just be an empty storage cellar. But in her heart she knew there was something unusual waiting for them. When the morning sun was high, they stood by the hatch again. The air smelled of rust and soil. Laura tied the rope to a nearby tree just in case, and then she slowly opened the hatch with a loud groan of metal. A chill came from below, making them shiver. She went first, shining her flashlight down the stone steps. Daniel followed close behind. Each step echoed in the silence, as though the walls themselves were listening. The staircase led them into a long tunnel built of stones that had grown damp and mossy with age. Water dripped faintly from cracks, and the sound echoed around them. Laura was amazed that the tunnel had lasted this long. Whoever built it had worked with skill and purpose. As they moved deeper, the air became cooler and their footsteps stirred dust that had not moved in years. After walking for several minutes, they reached a wide chamber. At the center of the room were old wooden crates stacked on top of each other. Laura carefully opened one, and inside she found rusted tools, broken lanterns, and papers so faded they crumbled when touched. Daniel pointed out a barrel in the corner, but when they pried it open, it was empty except for the smell of old earth. For a moment, disappointment washed over them. Perhaps this was all that lay beneath the plantation, just forgotten storage. But as Laura's flashlight swept across the far wall, something caught her eye. It was not stone like the rest of the tunnel. Instead, a large circular iron door stood there, covered in dust but still solid. The door was massive, with bolts along the edges and a strange locking mechanism in the center. It looked like a vault door. Laura's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen anything like it in person. Daniel ran up to the door, pressing his hands against it. "Mom, look, this is it. This has to be the secret," he said, his voice filled with awe. Laura touched the cold metal and felt a thrill rush through her. The design was old but sophisticated, not something anyone would build for ordinary storage. She knew instantly that something valuable had been placed behind it. They tried pushing it open, but the door did not budge. The locking system was made of interlocking gears and a large wheel at the center. Laura realized this was no ordinary lock. It was designed to keep intruders away. Daniel suggested they try breaking it, but Laura shook her head. The lock was too strong, and they didn't have the right tools. They would need help. That night, Laura could hardly sleep. Her mind kept replaying the sight of the vault door. What could be inside? Gold documents? Priceless artifacts? She also felt nervous. If anyone in town learned about this, there might be trouble. Secrets like this never stayed quiet for long. She decided to reach out to someone she trusted, someone who might help without telling others. The next morning, she drove to a nearby town and visited an antique locksmith named Mr. Carter. He was an elderly man known for his knowledge of old locks and safes. Laura told him she had found a very old vault on her property and asked if he could look at it. At first, he thought she was exaggerating, but when she described the design, his eyes widened. He agreed to come by, curious about the challenge. When Mr. Carter arrived at the plantation and saw the underground vault, he was speechless. "This is no ordinary safe," he whispered. "This is something families used when they wanted to protect fortunes. I've only seen drawings of mechanisms like this." He examined the lock carefully, turning the wheel gently, listening to the clicks inside. He explained that the mechanism was delicate but still functional, though it would take time to solve. For 2 days, Mr. Carter worked on the vault. Laura and Daniel brought him food and water as he stayed underground with his tools, listening, adjusting, and patiently testing combinations. On the third evening, Laura heard a deep metallic click echo through the chamber. Mr. Carter's wrinkled face lit up with triumph. "It's open," he said, stepping back. Laura and Daniel approached the door together. With a loud groan, the iron vault swung open, sending a wave of cold, stale air into the tunnel. Their flashlights revealed rows of wooden chests stacked neatly, untouched by time. Laura's heart pounded as she opened the first chest. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were bars of gold gleaming even through the dust. Another chest revealed stacks of gold coins, some stamped with markings from centuries past. Other containers held jewelry, silverware, and bundles of documents sealed with wax. Daniel gasped, his eyes wide. "Mom, this is real." "This is really real," he whispered. Laura could hardly breathe. She realized that they were standing in front of a hidden fortune that had been kept secret for generations. Mr. Carter, though amazed, reminded her gently that she should be careful. "What you've found here could be worth tens of millions," he said. "But treasures like this bring danger as well as fortune." Laura nodded, her excitement mixing with fear. She knew he was right. News of such a discovery could cause chaos. She thanked Mr. Carter for his help and made him promise to keep the secret. He agreed, saying he was too old to chase riches but wanted to see history revealed one last time. As Laura and Daniel carefully closed the vault again, they felt a mix of emotions. They were overwhelmed with joy at the idea that their lives could change forever, but they also knew they had to be smart. They could not rush. If they revealed the treasure too soon, others might try to take it. That night, Laura sat with Daniel on the porch. He kept talking about all the things they could do: buy a new house, travel the world, never have to worry about bills again. But Laura reminded him that their first job was to protect what they had found. "This is our secret for now," she said softly. "We'll figure out the right way to use it." The plantation was no longer just a home. It was the keeper of a vault filled with gold and history. Laura felt that destiny had brought her here, guiding her through struggle to this discovery. She knew the challenges ahead would be even greater, but she also felt stronger than ever. For the first time in years, Laura allowed herself to dream without fear. And as the stars shone brightly over the plantation, she realized that beneath her feet lay the key to a future beyond anything she had ever imagined. In the days after opening the vault, Laura and Daniel could think of little else. Their lives had changed in an instant, yet they had to keep living as though nothing unusual had happened. Laura still worked at the diner and cleaned offices, but her mind was always on the treasure beneath their feet. Daniel, who could hardly control his excitement, kept asking when they could use the gold to buy a car, fix the plantation, or go on trips. Laura reminded him again and again that they had to move carefully. She wanted to protect what they had found, not lose it because of rash decisions. But secrets never stay hidden for long. Even though Mr. Carter, the locksmith, had promised to keep silent, whispers began to spread. One of the neighbors who had seen Laura carrying tools back and forth started gossiping about strange activities at the plantation. Another claimed they had heard strange noises underground at night, even though Laura knew they had only gone down during the day. Before long, curious eyes seemed to be on the property at all hours. One evening, Laura noticed a truck parked at the end of her driveway. The driver pretended to be checking his phone, but he stayed there for nearly an hour before driving away. Another night, she heard footsteps near the barn, though when she checked, no one was there. She realized that word had begun to slip out, and people were starting to suspect something valuable was hidden on her land. The real trouble began when distant relatives of the plantation's original owners appeared in town. A man named Harold Gaines, who claimed to be the great-grandson of the family who once owned the estate, contacted her. He insisted that his family had rights to anything buried on the property. Laura knew this was not true. The plantation had been abandoned, seized by the bank, and sold legally to her. But Harold was clever. He spread stories in town that Laura had stolen what was rightfully his. Soon after, she received a letter from a lawyer representing the Gaines family, demanding that she open the vault to them. Laura felt the ground beneath her steady life beginning to shake. She could not afford expensive lawyers, yet she also could not let the treasure slip away. She went to the local courthouse and explained her situation to a judge. The judge told her that as the legal owner of the land, whatever was found beneath it belonged to her, unless someone could prove otherwise. That gave her hope, but she also knew it would not stop greedy people from trying to take it by force. One night, Laura was woken by the sound of metal scraping outside. Grabbing a flashlight, she went out and saw two men near the hatch trying to force it open. She shouted and they ran into the woods. Her heart pounded as she realized the vault was no longer safe. From then on, she and Daniel took turns keeping watch at night. The treasure that was supposed to bring peace was now drawing danger closer to them. Laura decided to strengthen her defenses. She bought stronger locks for the house and asked a trusted neighbor to help her set up cameras near the property's entrances. She also went back to the library and sought help from Mr. Whitman, the historian, who had first told her about the plantation's past. When he heard about her troubles, he advised her to collect every piece of documentation proving her ownership. He also encouraged her not to be intimidated. History has a way of rewarding those who protect it, he told her kindly. But the threats kept coming. Treasure hunters from out of town began to appear, asking questions at the diner where she worked. Some even drove up to the plantation pretending to be tourists. One bold man offered her money on the spot if she let him take a look underground. Laura refused every time, but she knew the situation was growing more dangerous. When the Gaines family filed a lawsuit against her, Laura thought she might lose everything. She sat at the kitchen table one night, tears streaming down her face while Daniel tried to comfort her. "Mom, we can't give up," he said firmly. "You always told me to be strong. This is ours. We have to fight for it." His words reminded her of why she had started this journey, to build a future for her son. She wiped her tears and decided she would not back down. Laura sought out a lawyer named Mr. Harper, who had a reputation for helping people in tough situations. Though she could not afford his fees at first, he agreed to take her case because he believed in fairness. Together they gathered every deed, bank paper, and record, proving that Laura had bought the plantation legally. In court, Mr. Harper argued that the land and everything on or beneath it was hers by right. The Gaines family tried to prove otherwise, but they had no real evidence. The legal battle dragged on for weeks. During that time, Laura endured sleepless nights, constant worry, and the fear that someone might break in at any moment. She worked during the day and spent her evenings cleaning the plantation and guarding the hatch. Daniel, though young, stood beside her, showing courage far beyond his years. At one point, a group of treasure hunters broke into the barn and tried to dig near the hatch. Laura called the police, who chased them away, but the incident only made her more determined. She realized the gold was not just about wealth. It was a test of her strength, her will to protect her son, and her right to the life she had fought so hard to build. Finally, the day came when the judge gave his decision. Standing in the small courthouse, Laura held her breath as the words were read. The court ruled in her favor. She was the rightful owner of the plantation and everything on it. The Gaines family had no claim. Relief flooded through her and tears filled her eyes. Daniel hugged her tightly, whispering, "We did it, Mom." But even with the legal battle won, Laura knew her challenges were not over. People would still come after the treasure, hoping to steal it. She had to be careful, smart, and patient. She could not just sell everything at once. Instead, she decided to take her time, quietly working with trusted experts to value and protect the gold. The plantation, once seen as cursed and unwanted, had now become the center of attention. For Laura, it was more than treasure. It was proof that her struggles, her sacrifices, and her leap of faith had led her to something extraordinary. She had faced danger, greed, and doubt, but she had not given up. And as she stood on the porch that evening, watching the sun dip behind the fields, she knew that the hardest part was behind her. Still, in her heart, she also knew this was only the beginning of a much larger journey. The gold was safe for now, but its presence would always bring both opportunity and risk. She had to find a way to use it wisely, not just for herself, but for Daniel and maybe even for the community around them. When the court ruled in Laura's favor, she felt as if the heavy chains of fear had been lifted from her shoulders. For months she had lived with worry that someone might take the treasure away, but now the law had spoken clearly. The gold was hers. On the night of the verdict, she and Daniel sat together on the porch, sipping cocoa as they often did. The stars stretched wide above them, and for the first time since moving to the plantation, Laura felt peace wash over her. Still, peace did not mean ease. Laura knew she could not simply open the vault and spend everything at once. She remembered the words of Mr. Carter, the locksmith. Treasures bring danger as well as fortune. With this in mind, she decided to be careful. She contacted a small group of trusted financial advisors in a nearby city, explaining the situation without revealing every detail. They helped her set up secure ways to sell portions of the gold slowly and legally. That way, she could turn her discovery into real wealth without drawing unnecessary attention. The first sales gave Laura enough money to repair the plantation. Workers arrived to fix the broken roof, replace shattered windows, and rebuild the collapsed porches. The gardens, once wild and overgrown, were cleared and replanted with flowers and trees. Daniel helped paint the walls, his laughter filling the air as he joked that they were finally making the haunted house look like a real home. The neighbors who had once shaken their heads in disbelief now stopped by to admire the changes, some even offering to help. Word spread through the town that the old plantation was being brought back to life. For years, people had seen it as cursed, a place of sadness and mystery. Now, under Laura's care, it became a place of hope. She hired local workers, giving jobs to those who needed them. The town's hardware store and lumberyard grew busier thanks to her projects. Slowly, the community began to benefit from her success, though few knew the true story of the vault hidden beneath the ground. As the months passed, Laura transformed the plantation into more than just a home. She turned part of it into a charming inn where travelers could stay. The grand dining room, once filled with dust and broken chairs, was restored with polished tables and glowing lights. Guests marveled at the wide porches, the old oak trees, and the peaceful fields. Many said the plantation felt alive again, as though it had been waiting for someone like Laura to breathe new life into it. Daniel thrived in this new chapter. No longer weighed down by worry about money, he excelled in school, joined clubs, and even talked about studying history one day to understand more about the secrets buried in the past. He often teased his mother that they lived in their own adventure story, one that no one would believe if they told it. Laura would smile and say, "Sometimes the best stories are the ones only we know." But Laura was not selfish with her fortune. She remembered the kindness of those who had stood by her when others doubted her. Mr. Whitman, the historian who had guided her, and Mr. Harper, the lawyer who had defended her rights. She donated to the library, ensuring its archives would be preserved, and she quietly covered the costs of school books for children in need. To her, wealth was not just about comfort. It was about giving back and building something lasting. Even as she used the gold wisely, Laura kept the vault itself locked and hidden. It remained their family's greatest secret. Sometimes, late at night, she would walk down the stone steps with Daniel and shine her flashlight on the gleaming bars and chests. The sight never failed to amaze her. She thought of the generations who had hidden it away, never imagining a single mother struggling to survive would one day uncover it. She often whispered a quiet promise in those moments, that she would honor the treasure by using it to build, not destroy. Years later, the plantation became a symbol in the region. Articles in the local paper praised Laura for turning a forgotten estate into a thriving inn and cultural landmark. Visitors came from far away to stay at the restored house, walk the fields, and hear the stories of the past. Though Laura never revealed the full truth about the vault, she sometimes hinted at the plantation's mysteries, enough to spark curiosity but never enough to endanger her family. One summer evening, as the sun set in golden light across the fields, Laura stood on the porch and watched Daniel play guitar with his friends near the garden. Their laughter floated through the air, mixing with the soft hum of crickets. The house behind her glowed warmly, filled with life, far from the abandoned ruin it had once been. She thought back to the night she had first seen the listing on her old laptop, when everyone else would have laughed at the idea of buying such a place. That decision, born from desperation and hope, had led her here. She remembered the cold nights of struggle, the fear of losing everything, and the constant whispers of doubt. She also remembered the joy of each victory, opening the hatch, stepping into the tunnel, seeing the vault for the first time, and winning the legal battles. Each moment was part of the journey that had shaped her into who she was now. Not just a single mother trying to survive, but a strong woman who had built a legacy. As Daniel came to sit beside her on the porch, handing her a glass of lemonade, he looked out at the glowing horizon and said, "Mom, you know what? You turned this place into something amazing. Everyone thought you were crazy, but look at it now. You made it ours." Laura smiled and squeezed his hand. "No, Daniel," she replied softly. "We made it ours together." The plantation, once abandoned and feared, now stood as a symbol of courage and resilience. Beneath its roots, the secret vault still waited in silence, holding the gold that had changed everything. Above, life blossomed in laughter, hard work, and love. Laura knew challenges would always come, but she also knew she could face them. After all, she had uncovered a fortune not just in gold, but in strength, hope, and the bond she shared with her son. And so the story of the single mom who bought an abandoned plantation became more than a tale of hidden treasure. It became a story of faith, determination, and the belief that sometimes the greatest risks lead to the brightest rewards.